On the evening of August 15, 2023, more than 400 police officers in Singapore simultaneously raided 9 of the country's most luxurious apartments. It was one of the largest coordinated arrests in the nation's history, the result of years of secret investigation. In panic, one suspect attempted to escape, jumping from a second-floor balcony. He sprained his wrist and ankle, then tried to hide in a drainage system, but was eventually captured. 10 suspects were arrested. Authorities seized luxury cars, fine art, cryptocurrency assets, designer watches and handbags, and cash worth over $1 billion. In fact, there were a total of 27 suspects, but only 10 were caught in this first wave. The remaining 17 are still on the run. Further investigation later revealed the total amount of illegal funds exceeded $3 billion, mostly from an online gambling platform operating illegally across Southeast Asia, as well as loan sharking and cyber scams. The case came to light when the group began laundering money in Singapore, marking it as the largest money laundering case in the nation's history and one that shocked the world. We have thoroughly investigated this case and how dirty money moves through the global financial system. But the story doesn't end there. Stay with us on Ancient World Channel as we uncover how the world of money laundering truly works. According to the United Nations, the global scale of money laundering is estimated to account for 2 to 5% of the world's GDP each year, equivalent to more than $2 trillion. Around us, in seemingly normal economic activities, art, luxury goods, real estate, corporate investments, or even ordinary banking transactions, money laundering may be quietly taking place. After studying hundreds of methods and cases, I began to see a pattern. So let's go straight to the point. What exactly is money laundering? First, it must be emphasized, money laundering is illegal. This video aims only to help you understand how it works, to better protect yourself and comprehend how the financial world operates. Simply put, money laundering is the process of making illegally obtained money appear legitimate so that criminals can spend it publicly. Some might ask, why not just spend the stolen money directly? If you only have a few $1,000s, perhaps you could. But what if you had millions or hundreds of millions? It's like a student suddenly bringing home $10,000. Their parents would immediately ask where it came from. Thus, laundering is essential when the stolen amount becomes enormous. Criminals must solve 2 main problems: erasing the money trail, justifying the source of income. To do this, criminals use various laundering techniques, from opening restaurants or laundromats to operating casinos or gold shops, industries with heavy cash flow that allow dirty money to blend easily with clean revenue. Historically, mafia bosses and drug lords often owned legitimate businesses. Mixing illegal cash with legitimate income made detection much harder. However, this method has limits. The business must look realistic. A restaurant that claims $100,000 a day without customers raises suspicion. Obviously, a drug lord isn't going to manage a laundromat personally. Therefore, small front businesses are usually just the first step in a much longer laundering chain. To minimize risk, criminals often use shell companies or nominees to hold their assets. Another common method is laundering money through casinos. Casinos are ideal because they deal in chips and large cash transactions. Criminals can exchange cash for chips, play a few games, and then cash out, claiming they won the money legally. However, modern casinos now impose strict verification for large transactions, making this harder. Then there are laundering methods involving asset transformation, converting money into other valuable forms to obscure its origin. Art as a laundering tool at art auctions. Transactions are often private, and cash payments can be accepted. Art prices fluctuate widely from $10,000 to hundreds of millions, making it easy to store illicit funds. For example, in Mexico, after the government limited cash transactions for art in 2012, the art market cooled dramatically, showing how much it had been used for laundering. A simple trick: buy a painting for $100,000. Then have an expert reappraise it at $10 million. Sell it to a shell company you control, and voila, you've earned $9.9 million legally. Art can also serve as a discreet form of bribery, an elegant alternative to handing over cash. Real estate. Another favored vehicle is real estate, more stable and enjoyable to own than art. In many major laundering operations, property serves as the final destination for laundered funds. In the Singapore case, for instance, authorities found links to over 200 properties. In countries like Dubai, one can purchase real estate with large cash payments and minimal scrutiny. Buying property through a shell company, then reselling it transforms dirty cash into capital gains. Criminals don't care about real value, they just want legitimacy. This artificial demand helps explain inflated property prices in places like Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, London, and New York. Gold. The classic method gold is portable, liquid, and globally recognized. For example, a Moroccan laundering network helped British drug lords clean their money through a sophisticated cross-border chain. Cash collected in the UK was driven to Paris, then handed to couriers who took it to Belgium. There, black market gold dealers converted it into gold bars. From Belgium, couriers flew to Dubai, where the gold was sold for clean money and deposited into anonymous offshore accounts. This system ran for years, laundering over $250 million until investigators followed irregular purchase patterns at a Dubai jewelry company. Money can be laundered not just through art, property or gold, but also through luxury goods, diamonds, prepaid cards, or even NFTs and virtual assets in the metaverse. Each conversion adds another layer of anonymity, making tracking nearly impossible. The shell company. Perhaps the most common method today involves shell companies, businesses that exist only on paper. These are often registered in tax havens like the British Virgin Islands, Bermuda, or Panama, allowing owners to stay anonymous and open offshore bank accounts. Criminals create complex networks. Company A lends to Company B, which transfers to Company C, each in a different jurisdiction. This creates a labyrinth of transactions designed to obscure origins. For instance, in the 1990s, a Mexican cartel deposited huge cash sums in Luxembourg under a shell company, then used that deposit as collateral to borrow money in Paris, and later moved it through Panama. Every international step adds legal and bureaucratic difficulty for investigators. Some might ask, why not just ban shell companies? The truth is, they also serve legitimate purposes, such as corporate structuring and tax optimization. The problem lies not in the mechanism itself, but in poor regulation and lack of transparency in certain jurisdictions. Since 2017, US and EU regulations have tightened, but enforcement still varies globally, and criminals exploit these inconsistencies, hopping from one country to another like a game of cat and mouse. Identity theft and banking loopholes. Criminals also open multiple bank accounts using stolen identities. Some victims only discover their names were used when they receive bank letters about accounts they never opened. Fraudsters often move money between these accounts, then wire it abroad, to places like Panama, making recovery almost impossible. Others trick ordinary people into becoming money mules, unwitting participants in laundering. They lure victims with fake top-up promotions, deposit $80, get $100, using them as intermediaries in the laundering chain. The digital arms race financial regulators are catching up. For example, Singapore now uses artificial intelligence to detect suspicious transaction patterns, identifying cases where thousands of accounts log in from one device or multiple devices share the same Wi-Fi network. Back to the Singapore case. The $3 billion Singapore case unraveled when a bank detected a forged asset certificate. That single document exposed the vast network of false ownership records, shell firms, and illegal gambling proceeds behind the operation. By 2024, 10 of the suspects had been sentenced to 13 to 17 months in prison, losing 100% of their assets. Many were released early for good behavior but deported afterward. The seized luxury items and properties were auctioned, adding billions to Singapore's treasury, but at the cost of reputational damage. In response, Singapore tightened its anti-money laundering and corruption laws, especially regarding the financial scrutiny of wealthy foreigners. Interestingly, as Singapore toughened regulations, many wealthy individuals shifted their assets to Hong Kong, leading to a surge in capital inflows there. It highlights the eternal dilemma of global finance. Wherever one system tightens, another opens.